Here's something that will quietly ruin your morning. The way you've been trying to get smarter is actually making you dumber. Not a little dumber, measurably, neurologically, provably dumber. And the worst part? The habits you think are signs of intelligence, reading constantly, taking notes on everything, watching educational content for hours, those are the exact habits that are quietly capping your cognitive ceiling. Welcome to the video that the self-improvement industry really doesn't want you to watch. Let's start with a fact that should be on every school wall but somehow isn't. IQ scores have been rising globally for over 100 years. Every single decade, the average IQ goes up by about 3 points. Scientists call this the Flynn effect, and it completely destroys the idea that intelligence is a fixed genetic lottery. But here's the part nobody talks about: why it's rising. It's not because humans are eating better kale. It's not because we have smartphones. In fact, the rise started before any of that. It's rising because the demands placed on abstract thinking have increased. The brain, when forced to think in new ways, physically rewires itself. That's not motivation poster language. That's neuroscience. And it means your brain right now, today, is not the brain you're stuck with. So the real question isn't, am I smart? The real question is, am I training my brain the way geniuses actually did, or the way Instagram told me to? Let's find out. Habit 1, the uncomfortable silence habit. Einstein, Newton, and Darwin had one thing in common nobody puts on motivational posters. They were aggressively boring. No podcasts, no input, just thinking. Alone, for hours. Neuroscience now knows exactly why this worked. With no external input, your brain activates the default mode network, a system so powerful researchers initially thought it was a scanner malfunction. It kept lighting up when people did nothing. It wasn't broken. The brain was doing its most important work, connecting unrelated ideas, generating insight, solving the problem you've been stuck on for weeks. Brutal truth: you can't activate the DMN while consuming content. Every notification, every podcast during a walk is literally shutting down your most powerful cognitive system. The habit? One 20-minute walk, no phone, no music, no input. It'll feel unbearable at first. That discomfort is your default mode network waking up from a coma. Habit 2. The wrong answer first protocol. When you don't know something, what do? If the answer is Google it immediately, you've been training your brain to be dependent, not intelligent. Psychologists call what actually builds intelligence productive struggle. When your brain fails to solve a problem, it flags it as unresolved and keeps processing it, recruiting more neural resources, building new pathways. The moment you outsource the answer, that process stops cold. Benjamin Franklin knew this 300 years before neuroscience confirmed it. He'd read an essay, close the book, then rewrite it from memory, not to memorize, but to force reconstruction. Every gap was a gap in his thinking. The habit? Before looking anything up, write your best attempt, even if wrong, especially if wrong. A 2021 UCLA study found students who attempted problems before instruction scored 25% higher on transfer tasks, applying knowledge to new situations. That's literally the definition of intelligence. Wrong answers first, right answers second. Habit 3. The writing that thinks, not the writing that records. Most people use writing as a filing cabinet. Geniuses use it as a laboratory. Da Vinci's notebooks were chaotic. Questions beside diagrams, beside half-finished theories. Feynman's notes looked like arguments with himself. Darwin's journals were full of unresolved contradictions. These weren't people recording what they knew. They were writing to discover what they didn't know yet. The neuroscience? Writing by hand forces your brain to slow to the speed of understanding, not transcription. You're forced to compress, select, synthesize, which is exactly what intelligence looks like at the neural level. Princeton and UCLA confirmed it. Handwritten note-takers scored higher on conceptual questions, not because they wrote more, but because they wrote less, more carefully. The habit? A thinking journal. Not a diary, not a to-do list. Write questions you can't answer, ideas that confuse you, connections you're not sure are real. The goal isn't to fill pages, it's to find the edges of what you actually understand. Let's continue with habit 4, the cross-domain contamination strategy. Here's something that makes specialists uncomfortable. The most measurably intelligent people in history were almost never specialists. Aristotle worked in biology, logic, ethics, physics, and poetry. Leonardo da Vinci studied anatomy, engineering, painting, and music. Leibniz invented calculus and modern logic while writing philosophy. Tesla held patents in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and physics at the same time. This isn't a coincidence, it's a cognitive strategy. When you learn deeply in one domain and then encounter a structurally similar problem in a completely different domain, your brain makes a connection that specialists in either field miss. Researchers call this transfer intelligence, and it's the highest form of fluid reasoning we can measure. Charlie Munger described it as a lattice work of mental models. He studied psychology, physics, biology, and economics, not to become an expert in each, but to build a brain that could see patterns across systems. The habit is simple. Once a week, spend 30 minutes learning one conceptual idea from a field completely outside your normal life. Not facts, concepts. How does evolutionary biology think about competition? How does thermodynamics define efficiency? How does game theory model cooperation? Each new mental model is a new lens, and the more lenses you have, the more of reality you can actually see. Now, habit 5, the memory paradox. In the age of infinite information, memory matters more than ever, not less. Most people think memory and intelligence are separate. They're wrong. Working memory, the ability to hold and manipulate information at the same time, is one of the strongest predictors of fluid intelligence ever measured. Not grades, not test scores, working memory. And it's trainable. The technique is uncomfortable. It's called active recall. Don't reread notes, close them, and reconstruct the idea from scratch. Don't highlight. Explain the concept out loud to an imaginary person who knows nothing. This is the Feynman technique, and it's brutal in the best way. The moment you try to explain something simply, every fake patch of understanding is exposed. Brain imaging studies show that people who practice active recall develop denser, more efficient neural connections in the prefrontal cortex, the region most associated with reasoning and abstraction. The habit is this. After learning anything, wait 24 hours, then recall without looking. Every gap is a gift. It's your brain pointing to exactly where to build. Now, habit 6, the cognitive energy paradox. This one will make hustle culture angry. The smartest people in history didn't think more, they thought better, and they protected cognitive energy like it was their most valuable resource, because it was. Darwin worked 4 to 5 focused hours a day, then walked and rested deliberately. Poincaré worked in 2 two-hour blocks. The rest, he said, was unconscious work, what we now call letting the default mode network run. Here's the neuroscience the productivity industry won't monetize. The brain upgrades during rest, not during work. Sleep deprivation shrinks the prefrontal cortex over time. Chronic stress floods the brain with cortisol, actively damaging neurons in the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory and learning. You cannot hustle your way to a better brain. You can only recover your way there. The habit is to protect sleep like a performance tool. Allow boredom. Rest isn't laziness. It's the phase where the upgrade actually installs. So, here's the uncomfortable summary. Getting smarter isn't about consuming more, it's about thinking deliberately, struggling productively, building mental models across domains, training memory through active recall, and protecting the cognitive energy that makes all of it possible. IQ isn't a ceiling, it's a current score, and these habits are ways to raise it. The people who figured this out didn't have better genes, they had better systems. Now you have the system. What you do with it is the only question that matters. If this made you think differently about how you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe because we're just getting started.